President Cyril Ramaphosa is taking part in a webinar this afternoon looking into government support for SMMEs and cooperatives. The webinar will also focus on SMME debt relief scheme. For more on what yesterday's budget means for the SME sector, I'm joined by Garth Rossiter, who is the Chief Risk Officer at Lulalend. Garth, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Hi, Nastasia. Good to be here.
So I'm sure you've had plenty of time to study the rest of the finance minister's budget speech. Your first reaction to it?
Look, Nastasia, I think we all know the minister had a difficult budget to deliver. I think we all know, as he mentioned, he couldn't go the austerity route, and he had very little room to maneuver in terms of raising taxes, etc. So what we found for SMEs, which we thought was really, really positive, the lack of tax increases, the reduction in the corporate tax rate, which to 27%, which I think will be quite a welcome relief. It's something we've been encouraging across the board. And obviously it improves our competitiveness as a country. And it aligns us more closely with the rates that we're seeing in our trading partners. So that was really super. And I think it was a really bold move in this economic environment.
Yeah. No, continue.
Sorry. No. I think what I really enjoyed though is that he referred several times to removing small business barriers to doing business and creating a robust sort of economy and business-friendly economy, which is all positive.
Right. Garth, what would you have liked to see in the budget speech?
Look, I think it's as good as we could have expected, to be honest. I think it's great for small businesses that we're not seeing those tax increases, as I mentioned. I think it would have been a difficult pill to swallow had we seen those. So we did mention that we thought a reduction in the corporate tax rate, although counterintuitive in a lot of respects, would be great for the South African economy. And I think that's what our small business owners are really looking forward to. I think the support that we're also seeing from the government in terms of the CIFA fund and the funding via that, the 4 billion rand, which is allocated to medium and small enterprises within townships and rural areas, I think that's really positive. And those are the sort of things which I think we were expecting, and they came to fruition, which is great.
When it comes to, the space that you're in, alternative lending, do you find that, yourself as Lulalend and those who operate in that same space have been part of the conversation, included in the ways in which you can stimulate the SMME sector? I mean, we constantly talk about it being a job creator. Over the past couple of years or so, do you find that your presence in those conversations has been heightened?
Look, Nastasia, I think there's a lot of demand for the services alternative lenders provide and the space we're in. And that's by virtue of the fact that we fund businesses a lot faster than banks can. I think the government's done the right thing in introducing that 200 billion rand loan guarantee scheme. Unfortunately, I think it was it might not have been as effective as it could have been in stimulating the economy and promoting small businesses being done through the banks, because I don't feel banks are necessarily tailored to turn these requests and advances around as quickly as alternative lenders may be. So I think we're seeing a lot of demand, and we're obviously trying to play our role and doing what we can to stimulate the economy and get funding out there. And I think that's, whether it's enough, it'll never be enough.
Right. In terms of the economic growth for South Africa, they gave a very, call it an optimistic upward revision of 3.3%. I mean, when you look at all of that, given the fact that it is quite positive that we're starting to inoculate our healthcare workers, and hopefully soon it'll start rolling out to the general population. What do you believe this budget will hinge on in terms of its success rate?
I think, Nastasia, you've hit the nail on the head there with that vaccine rollout. So I think one thing our businesses have struggled with, pre-COVID, they were struggling with Eskom and power cuts, which is really detrimental to our SME environment. And what's really important is that the SME community or sector contributes about 60% of the private sector jobs in the country. So Eskom initially was a bit of an issue, and then COVID rollout, I think, is what's absolutely critical right now to get people back into work get people out of hospital, and get back to some form of normality. So I think that's what's super important. The 3.3% GDP target, I think it may be optimistic. It really depends. We've seen some good, in our client base, we've seen some great growth in the last 3 months, which is great. But obviously we need some sort of sustainability. And that remains to be seen whether we can reach that. And it ties in a lot with the infrastructure development and Eskom keeping the lights on.
One of the compliments that your sector often gets is that you seem to understand the SME sector better than the banks. So when it comes to that part of the conversation, what is it about the SME sector that we still don't quite get? I mean, we constantly have shows that look at small businesses, look at the trials and issues that entrepreneurs go through. But from your perspective, what do you think is missing in that conversation?
Sasi, I don't think it's super complicated. I mean, if you're a small business owner, what are you looking for? One of the biggest things they struggle with is cash flow, and they can't afford to wait around for it. So what we do differently is we fund the businesses within 24 hours, and that's the sort of time where, if you're looking for working capital, that's the difference between failure, not getting a contract, or getting a contract. So I think it's big, banks are big. They've got processes they need to follow, which is completely understandable. But it's a very, very difficult ship to turn. So I suppose, smaller alternative lenders are more nimble. We can make adjustments a lot more quicker. And our credit scoring and modeling is probably more advanced than the banks. So we can lend funds to businesses which banks otherwise might shy away from.
Garth, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That is Garth Rossiter, who is the Chief Risk Officer at Lulalend. Well, we have the Alternative Investor with me coming up after the short break.